in real estate. Okay. Hotel, $7 million mobile home parks. It seems like a really big step more than any of us are in our journey. And so just figuring out where do we start? You happen to be in the industry that creates more, has the potential to create more wealth than just about anything else. And just changing the way you view every appointment and before you step foot on the property and thinking, am I going to be the listing agent today or am I going to be the buyer today? Can be a, is that?
I hated that.
Yeah. Well,
It was hard.
once, but you got to get clear on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Which hat you're going to wear when you cross the threshold. So, Drue, just can you give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are, how long you've been in the business, and how long you've been investing in real estate?
Sure. So I'm Drue Richmond. I work on the new user sales director. I have had every position there is to have in real estate.
How long have you been in real estate?
9 years.
How long have you been investing in real estate?
3 years.
And what specific skills do you and your family possess that allows you to invest in real estate?
Literally zero. Like, zero.
Okay.
For sure.
This is an interactive show, by the way, guys.
For sure. For sure. And just part of introduction, and especially anybody who doesn't know me or anybody who is thinking and has fears of challenges of investing in real estate, you will get total open book from me. What that journey was like. And the stuff that's on my shirt.
So when we were talking about your investment, just where are you in the investment journey at this point? And then we'll kind of back into it.
Sure. So we only have 3 investments. I'm not going with the big portfolio, just 3 investments. Where I am in the journey, I would say, like I'm not at the beginning, but I'm not halfway of where I would be. I don't have like desires to own 40 properties by any means.
So when we started the conversation the other day, you led me down the path of, well, before we talk about any specific properties, let's talk about why you even started investing and what kind of lit the fire.
Sure. So you asked what specific skills do I have. I feel like I'm a fairly smart person, but I'm also not the person who does like this massive analysis on the properties that I look at. As I talk to Dave and he tells me the 4 different things that I can do whenever I'm investing in real estate. The reason we started investing in real estate was because it was something very easy for me to see. I could tangibly see what an investment in real estate could do for me and my family. So, I invest in the market and have an IRA and all of those other things, but that money could literally be monopoly money to me. Like, I have no idea. I can't conceptualize in 15 years when my son's going to college what that money will be like. But I can conceptualize that I get, $1,200 in rent, and over the next 15 years, a tenant will pay that off. And at the time when my son goes to college, I can pull out, $100,000 in equity and pay for that, right? So I can see that, or I can see, reasons I invest in real estate, or I can see is, if I own, 5 properties that I know the rents will be about $1,000 a month. When I retire, I know I'll have an income of $5,000 a month. But those are the things I can see. So when I say that I'm not like incredibly smart, it's just, I like the simple terms of seeing that. I can't see what those investment, like money market, all of that is. I don't know what that means to me during that time. Some people do, I just don't.
No, it's funny. I've met a lot of people who have built nice real estate portfolios, and many of them, when I talk to them, I say, how did you get started? And their answer is, well, I had 3 kids, so I figured I'd buy 3 rentals, and over 20 years, it would pay for college. And that was their segue, right?
Yep.
And yours was much the same. So once you decided you needed to buy a rental to fund college, effectively, like there's 8,000 properties that sell in our market. You decide which one to target.
Yeah. So I heard somebody say they were worried about management. Was that? Yeah, and like management in what way?
Just being a landlord, making sure that everything's staying up to, I guess just kind of up to snuff as far as taking care of the building.
Yeah.
I guess some of that just kind of
Sure.
intimidating.
Sure. So I was talking to Jason before we got started, and I think that the first thing that's important for you to know as you're thinking about investing in real estate is know who you are and what it is that you would be looking for, and understand that that is different for everybody. So for me and my family, we want easy. I would love it if it's a townhouse on a slab, doesn't even have central air, like the nothing can go wrong. I also like if it's like a nice place to live that I can get a little bit of a higher rent on it. In that I'm not dealing with turnover and like massive problems that are gonna happen is what I look for. I have friends who are contractors and they look for something that's 60 grand that they can, they know that that's a financial deal for them and they can remodel it and all of that stuff. I don't have a contractor at my disposal like that. So I always look for easy, very easy is what I look for. Knowing that it may be a little bit more money, but for me in the long run, it's worth it. That makes sense?
All right, so easy for you, assuming that this loads again. And it didn't. All right, so tell us about so you knew you wanted to look for easy.
Mhm.
How did you decide what that was going to look like with the first one? Were you just, like, what process did you go through to figure that out?
We're not talking about money yet, right?
Nope.
Okay. I mean, I think that we just knew who we were, what our strengths were, and what we like had time and resources for. We'll probably at some point talk to Sinjin, who is an Airbnb master, right? And we have one of those now, but at the time when we were buying our first one, I could not imagine the turnover of what that would look like, right? I knew that would make me more money, but it just wasn't what I was looking for in my life. I was looking for easy. And so like many of you, I've been in a lot of houses and I know a lot of things that can go wrong with different types of houses. So I don't want an 1800s house with like a stone foundation and like a 1900s boiler that's in there, right? Those are just things that don't appeal to me. As I looked at this one, this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath townhouse on a slab built in the early 2000s. And as I'm assessing the risk, as any of us are if we're buying a house, the things that I know that could go wrong with this are it might need a new gas furnace or air conditioner. At some point, it's probably going to need a new roof. But other than that, there's very little that can go wrong.
Okay.
So I think number one is decide like where your strengths might be, right? If it is in doing any of that maintenance or anything like that, that's your strength, and harness that strength and buy a cheaper property that can do that for you, right? If it's not, then don't buy a property like that. Like I think what I guess I'm trying to say is, as you hear other people talking about what they look for, don't make that your thing if that's not your thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I chime in on that?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at a 6 unit tomorrow, and I know it's kind of out of my cookie cutter, but what I like to buy. So I'm actually bringing an investor with me because I told him, hey, I want to make an offer on it, but if I don't like it, because it has a boiler for all 6 units,
Mhm.
I don't think I like that. Oil heat. He's willing to do a backup offer if I want.
Yeah.
Because I already know it's
Yeah.
something I don't want to pursue, but
Yeah, I looked
trying to
at
step out
it,
of the
I
box.
looked at a property, it was a 4 unit, and I realized, like, I ran the numbers financially on paper, it was great, and it's probably great for a lot of people, but what I realized was, it was outside of what we've identified as our niche, and there's cons to going outside of your niche, and it wasn't great for me, it's been awesome for Cinchin, right? You know, it's been awesome for somebody else, and that's just okay.
So far, your kind of band of investment is simple, few things as possible that can go wrong. Maybe a little bit higher rent price for the market type property. Can you walk us through the math on this one? This was investment number one.
This was investment number one. It's funny, Matt and I were talking about this morning, getting ready for it. So, this one was 127,000. And at the time, I thought I was overpaying for it. I was like, it felt really high to me in price, and looking at comparables and thinking about it from an investment standpoint and what I would get for, as we're talking about money, what I would get for rent versus my mortgage. It felt really high for me, which is funny because they're now selling for 210. Right, so it's really bizarre.
So this is, for the record, 3 years later.
3 years later.
That's insane. Results not
3
typical
years
Is
later.
that the normal price in that neighborhood?
at the time.
At the time it was,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it felt like a lot because it's 900 square feet,
it's tiny,
2 bedrooms, 1 bath.
it's tiny.
And so what did something like that rent for at the time?
At the time I got 1150.
Okay, so mathematically on that, it's $130,000 purchase price, make the math easy, kind of financing that you seek.
Conventional financing, 20% down.
And term,
So this is where we get into our lesson. First time did it really fast, wasn't paying any attention, put a 30-year mortgage on it.
so you say that like it's a bad thing,
Yep, that's not a bad thing.
right? So we started with know who you are, what your strengths are, what you're looking at.
That's right.
And so what were you looking for that made a 30-year term bad?
I was looking for a property that would be paid down by a tenant when my son went to college.
Oh.
Right, and so for me, that 30-year was a mistake because it wouldn't have been paid down when he went to college. It would have been paid down for retirement, which is my secondary. So first is pay for college, second is pay for my future and leave a legacy. And so it didn't check off that box for me the first time that I did it. So for some people, you might be buying a property that you are looking for income right now, right? You might be looking for income right now. And for that person, a 30-year mortgage is probably a good idea because it'll cash flow higher and put income in your pocket. That wasn't what my goal was whenever we bought our first one.
So you bought it under your personal name?
Yeah. We bought our first one.
So good question, right? So the reason she could get a 30-year mortgage is because she is using residential financing, which can go out 30-year fixed, which for a first-time investor, even if it's a mistake, might be a safe conservative play, right? Even if you had thought
Absolutely.
through that, you might have thought, you know what, I don't know what I'm getting into. Maybe having some safety in the monthly obligation.
You're right, because on that one, the rent was $11.50. So this was my first one. I had no like cushion, obviously, and if anything went wrong. So the mortgage, when I got that one, I think for number's sake was around like $800, maybe less than that, maybe $750. And then my rent was $11.50. So it did help me to be able to build a cushion if I never had one.
For the record, $300 a door is not a bad cushion, but, so
Question, so whenever you got financing for that,
Mhm.
what did the financing look like?
So the first time before I refinanced it, I got a 30-year convention, non-owner occupied conventional loan. I think I put 20% down, and at the time, 3 years ago, interest rates were 5.25. And that was part of my other, whenever I got it at that, I was like, gosh, interest rates are so high, right? But had I not done it, like, look where I would have been today, look where I would have been today. Now, the lesson that I learned was I was buying it for a purpose of college, which will be in about 15 years. And so I was able to do a refinance to 15 years with a much lower interest rate.
yes. So you got a little lucky on that.
I got a little lucky
The-
on that.
The interest rate market dip, was able to
Yeah.
refi at a shorter term. Now she knows the property a little better. She has had a little bit of time to build a cash reserve, was able to refi, still cover it
Mhm.
and pay off in half.
Yeah, and so again, and then, for this one in particular, to go back to sort of the maintenance and whatnot, so, and everybody will tell you something different. I typically find a tenant on Facebook Marketplace is, the rental market is absolutely unbelievable. You would not, and sometimes I'm like, people pay what? And this is happening. So now that rents for $13.50. And when I put that up, after that tenant moved out and put that up, I had 100 inquiries overnight. Which is unbelievable.
So you could make an extra 2 to 3 payments per year based on the additional rent you're receiving now. They pay that off in more like 11 years if you're the one. What else have you learned? So again, this is number one. You didn't know what it was like to manage a single family rental. What kind of nightmare calls did you get that first year? What was the worst call?
The only bad calls I've ever had is the furnace is probably on its last leg, so some days with no heat is probably it. That's it.
On that unit or different?
No, on this one. On this one. I have not replaced it yet.
So it hasn't been bad enough.
It hasn't been bad enough. It's been fixed every time. Got a big Band-Aid on it, but yeah, those are the only ones, and it's 800 square feet, so take a road heater. Until then, that's it for any property that I own. Somebody else can probably give you a nightmare.
Yeah, I didn't, but I was guessing that you didn't have a nightmare, so.
No, I don't.
So other than just having patience in the current market, how do you go about finding the right operating now? Because are there certain characteristics that can set you apart, maybe a little better luck of getting that property?
So, I think that it would be a limiting belief to say that you can't find a property right now. So I bought another one in August. That was another townhouse that Sinjin helped me find, randomly. But, and it was listed at 145, and I think I got it for 132, and I wasn't competing. Right, so it's possible to buy in this market, and the interest rate is incredibly low. Right, and again, at the time, I felt like I was paying a lot of money for it, right? But I know that I'm not, because the alternative is not buying anything.
And if your goal is to build like a big portfolio rather than, just keep something where you can pay off 15 years and have a couple of those. I mean, is having that higher cash flow, taking 30 years, having that cash flow to build up and buy more properties, like that in that instance, or, I know one of the things they said was, having a very small amount of cash flow is not necessarily a bad thing because of 15 years, and then this pay off.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your goals are. I think if you need cash to live on now, or if you want cash to be able to help you buy something else, right? Either live on now or give yourself a cushion. Maybe it's a property that's going to have high vacancy or high maintenance. Or if you want to use that cash flow to buy something else, then your cash flow makes a difference. But if you don't, if none of those things are true, then cash flow doesn't make as much of a difference.
Yeah, I think it, also your overall financial situation comes into play, right? It's, if that furnace goes out this month and you've got to write a $9,000 check, is it gonna impact your ability to pay your bill? And if the answer to that is yes, you might want to save another $9,000, or make sure you have a line of credit in place. You just gotta think through a couple of short-term, reasonably worst-case scenarios.
Let's talk about financial situation.
Where do you want to start on?
Where do you want to start?
You brought it up, interview me.
No, you were.
I'll ask a question.
So it's,
Help us.
I'll ask a question with that.
Yeah.
Before even thinking about going through that, is there a certain amount that you recommend having as an emergency fund in the bank, like of your, monthly income? Would you do that before even thinking about it?
Yes.
and just for fun, I'll say no.
Good.
Well,
Continue.
So this is why things like this are so great, because I'll go back to my original, don't veer off from who you are as a person and your beliefs and everything that is what you are. So I am incredibly conservative with my money. People tell you, most conservative people tell you to have 6 months in reserves for your own family in case something happens. And I have always stretched that further. Whereas Matt might be a little more risky and doesn't follow that same philosophy, right? And I think, as we talk about, well, where do you get that 20% down? For me, this story is pretty simple. Like Jason just asked me if my bag was a Kate Spade bag. And it's not to say I don't buy it like some nice things, but I've always been conservative with my money, to be able to get there and found a way. Like if this is what you want, if this is part of your future, you'll find a way to get there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You won't go to Starbucks as many times as you do, or you will find a way, in your case, to build your business bigger, to be able to find that to happen. Or as real estate agents, we'll sell a few more freaking houses, right? We'll sell more houses, and then you have to be really smart about your money, about what you're going to do. And I prefer to do that automatically, because if I'm left to make a decision of whether I want to put 10% of my commission check into an investment, like into an account that will help me to buy an investment, or if it just automatically happens, I probably won't do it if it's the former. Is what my advice is.
just so you have context on my no, it's not really a no. It's right? So Drew's absolutely right. Most financial advisors are going to say have 3 to 6 months living in reserve and start dealing with other things. And many will say, and make sure you battle down your debt before you take one investment. I'm probably a little bit more aggressive than most. Now, in the core businesses, so in Keller Williams and our former brokerage, Dave and I have still run the same ultra conservative play. We maintain generally 4 to 6 months worth of operating expenses that if we don't sell a house for 4 to 6 months, nobody needs to lose their job. Right? We believe profit protects people. And the same is true in your household. And yet, if you have a strong foundation somewhere in your life, you can choose where to take a little bit more risk. So for me, I tend to choose to take a little bit more risk on my real estate investments because I'm not looking for immediate cash flow and because I have an earmarked mind for college 14 and a half years out. Mine is more long-term wealth creation. So my strategy is more about what can I control now so that I have the asset 25 years. For that, I can lever a little bit more. It's just math. It's just fairly simple math. But what can I get away with leveraging to make it? But to your point, there should be some reserve before you deplete everything on an investment, and yet, Drue's strategy is generally 25% down 15 years. I don't know that that's the norm for a first-time investor,
Or has to be.
or has to be, right? It's just a matter of starting with your goals and what's.
For sure.
So, I was just gonna say, how you determine the right price is already there,
Reviewing what competition.
Okay.
Reviewing what, and I'll, so for our Airbnb, I'll look at what other Airbnbs are charging or what hotels are charging or like what events are happening that may do that. For rent, I'm looking on Facebook Marketplace to find something similar and see what they're renting for. Is pretty much what I'm doing.
Don't overcomplicate it. If you were gonna open a convenience store and sell bottles of water, you go into every other convenience store and see how much they charge for a bottle of water.
Yeah.
So doing the same thing on the rental market is about as scientific as most people need to get.
So how do you analyze a property?
Search them.
Like financially?
Yeah, just to see if it's a good, are
Yeah,
you just
and,
thinking appreciation long-term, no matter what? If they pay my mortgage, I know 15 years from now, if trends continue on, it's gonna be worth.
and that's my statement at the beginning is that I'm not gonna be I'm like it or love it, or not love it. I'm not gonna be your one who's gonna analyze this and like decide financially if it's a good one. If my mortgage is covered and then has a little bit of extra on it for me, and it meets those other requirements of what I look for in an easy property,
Mhm.
then it's a good buy for me.
Perfect.
Then it's a good buy for me.
There's some location.
Whereas they'll do all. Yeah. There's all this. There's all this.
It's kind of going back into your financial stuff, but like, was there anything immediate with these three specific properties? You said you like easy. What were some minor things that you have done? Did you? Anything to?
I've never done anything to any property that I bought, in 3 years. It's not to say I
Painted
won't.
stuff.
I painted one living room. I painted one living room in a whole house, but again, very easy. I think this one, this seller took the washer and dryer and I got a washer and dryer out of someone else's house for free. That I put, somebody, like one of our sellers was getting rid of it kind of thing and just put it in there. I think that's it. Changed, I put a keypad lock on. It's pretty easy.
Do you do anything to factor in like homeowners insurance and furnace?
So just principal, interest, taxes and insurance is like when I'm looking at that, and my rent, that's it.
So she had
Again, not
mentioned,
fancy.
yeah, she had mentioned earlier that Dave goes through like the 4 returns, which if you don't know, there's 4 returns for real estate. So cash flow, it's just literally at the end of the month, you have more or less money that you started. Appreciation, principal reduction, and then any tax liability or savings that you might get out of the real estate. So the vast majority of investors that I talk to, when they first get started, the only thing they're thinking about is cash flow. Right? Because they just want to be, they figure if I can control an asset and not go backwards on a monthly basis, I'm moving the needle forward. And then as they get a little bit more comfortable, then they tend to start thinking about the other 2. And then that cash flow math, I have a worksheet for anybody who wants it. And it's gross income, so it's the amount of rent you expect minus your vacancy, minus your operating expenses is your gross profit, less any debt services. I'm sorry, that's your net profit or your net income and then less debt service is your actual cash flow.
And I am not saying, I'm not saying to listen to my advice on this. I'm gonna say that one more time. I'm not saying listen to my advice. But I generally, he just gave you a whole bunch of things. I generally think for the type of property I'm looking for, that I'm gonna have very little vacancy. And I think I'm gonna have very little maintenance or management. Right, so I don't even really take those into my consideration. I say, what am I gonna get in rent? Does that cover my principal, interest, taxes, and insurance? And if it does, my goal is not to have a high cash flow right now. And so it's good for me. Super simple.
Well, so the interesting thing though is you have almost no cash flow. Like, your net cash flow is nearly zero, but you have massive principal reduction. Right, that's where the bulk of your returns actually come.
Yep.
And most people don't think about it in those terms, but nor, like you said, you didn't think about it in those terms.
Don't think about it.
That's the one you care. So you
Yeah.
care that this is a little bit above zero and maximize that.
Yeah, and Jared, I'm gonna pick on you for a second, because when Jared and I first started talking about investing in real estate, Jared had like an idea in his mind of like, this is the way that you invest in real estate, right? And like, you had an idea of like, what kind of property makes the most sense and all of those things. And what I hope to bring to you and to anybody else today is, there's not just one idea, right? There's many. There's many ideas about what we're looking for in the type of house. There's also many ideas on where you get started, you know, as you talk about down payments and how to get that to start with. You know, Dave tells his story that he lived in a cabin on the creek that had no heat, and he lived rent free, and he was able to save all his money when he did that to be able to buy his first property. I lived in a $97,000 house that had rats in Union County, which was able to sell that for a profit and start my amount for that, you know, and that was mine. Some people will buy a multi-unit, will live in one and will rent the other, right? There's many different ways. You know, some people will just earmark, I know I need, of every paycheck, I need to fund this investment account a certain amount. By the time that I get X, I can buy my first property. I think there's many different ways to get there. But I do absolutely believe that you don't have to make a lot of money to be able to buy your first investment.
I think I overcomplicated it, like, I'm very analytical
Yeah.
on that side of things, and but, you know, if you do things like you, it makes it sound
Don't
so easy.
overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Don't ever
sounds
complicate
simple.
it. It's just, it's not. Because then the other thing, the one number that we haven't talked about yet is the opportunity costs. So if you don't buy the property, right, there's a financial price tag to that too. I haven't run them on this one to see what would have happened if I didn't
Well,
buy it. Exactly.
Part of the really simple is if she would have waited 3 years longer to start the real estate investment journey, her barrier to entry just went from 20% of 130, so $26,000 down payment, to 20% of 210, so now it's $42,000 down payment. And the debt service would be higher, right? It's just more of a head on. That's a big chunk of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And your equity split.
Yeah, equity split, you know, all the lost rent that I did receive, the income that I did receive during that time.
So you also do have, so you're now intentional about where you're going with this, but even back then, did you give your, like, once you decided your reserve account was in place and you said, okay, now's the time to get insurance, did you, like, what did that look like? Did you set a goal of, I'm going to buy my first one by the end of the year?
Yeah, I imagine that I did.
Okay, and now you have an annual goal?
I do.
So it's not like, well, if I see something in that neighborhood, I might go look at it.
Right.
It's, my goal is to add 2 properties in 2022 from X to Y.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like, again, like seeing it in age and time, like all of that is really easy for me. So I know that in, 15 to 20 years, I'll be getting close to retirement, right? And so as I apply the mortgages to those, like I know what I need to buy now so that they'll be paid off then. Does that make sense? So that's what determines my goals for me.
Yeah, I think
And
that,
then and then in that year that I have to buy those, I'll financially figure out what choices I need to make, what actions I need to take, whether that's with my budget or with my agent who's looking for properties, for me to be able to make it happen.
I was just gonna say, so what exactly are you looking at of a previous property? What are you looking to get out of it? Is it a certain amount of, I mean, trying to think of how I want to word this. I guess what leads you to then say, hey, okay, I can go buy another property? Are you looking for a certain amount of equity in it, in your previous property? Like you said that you're gonna have 2 here in 2022. You're gonna get
I
2.
said that I was making up.
Oh, okay.
You mean like, how do I know?
That it's time to get
financially
another
that it's time to get another one?
Yeah.
I know what I need to, as part of my investment strategy, I know how many I need to buy when, and then financially, it's just figuring out how to get there. You know, and so for some people, that might be, I need to sell 6 more houses and save 20% or 10% of each check to be able to do that. It could mean that I need to pull the equity out of this one, because there's a lot of it now, from the market, you know, as a place to get it. Or if I were spending that cash reserve, you know, that I received, is a place to do that from. I think like the where you get that. I wouldn't say that, like, I think what you're asking is,
I think he's asking, does this one have to perform before you buy the next one?
yeah, and for me, the answer is no. It's my goals of what I need to earn in retirement don't change based on how
Right,
this
so it
one's
just goes back to
performing.
that
So
personal
my
goal.
actions need to change to be able to make that happen.
Okay.
In some way.
Yeah, it's much like if you're working with an investment, you know, a retirement person, and they're telling you to take $500 a month and put it into an account. If one of the funds or stocks in that retirement account goes down, it doesn't impact whether you put $500 in next month. It's just stick to the plan, keep moving forward, and trust that over time, that the plan will yield the results
It'll
that
start
it's set up to
yeah.
do. And with real estate, we know that there are highs and lows, and yet historically, if you own an asset more than 5 to 7 years, you can outrun that market. So even if that one would have dipped for a period of time, it wouldn't matter because it would have come back.
If the market does, just work this in market takes its own. And, you know, you can simply lower your rent, or you have to worry about that, because with people, if that were to happen and people aren't buying homes, then it's more renters, and you have to worry about fluctuating rent prices in response
I
to.
think you're never gonna have to worry about that, like, there's never gonna be a market where there's not gonna be somebody who needs to rent something.
Cool.
We live in the fastest growing county. We live in the fastest growing county.
I don't know, I'm
You
more than
don't,
you guys.
you don't.
You live near the fastest
I'm
growing
here.
county in
I
the
just
state.
think that I think you could what if,
Yeah.
like everything, right? And just make it freaking simple on yourself. Like, you don't, again, don't always listen to me. You don't always need to run this fancy analysis, and the numbers don't have to be perfect, right? And you don't have to wait for the perfect property to come up, right? Or, you know, just any of those things
So,
to get started.
yeah, real estate, number one,
Literally,
is
just
an
buy a
inflation
townhouse.
hedge. Real estate is an inflation hedge. Even if the value of it goes down, she's in a fixed rate mortgage, payment isn't gonna change. So residential real estate is an inflation hedge. There's an office where she might speak otherwise. But residential real estate, up or down, the rents probably aren't gonna come back down. Right, short of somebody coming in and building 4,000 units in.
Well, actually, let me say that really quick. So, has anybody been to Carlisle? Do you know where Summer Bridge is, where the little town, where the townhouse is with the palm trees?
I
on it,
owned a
right?
townhouse
Right?
real close to where you
So
are.
Summer Bridge, that place is like 500 apartments, was built literally right in front of this
Yes.
house the month after I bought this house. Like 500 units,
Brand new.
brand new.
whatever, do I still get the rent every month? I do. Right.
You actually get more than they do.
I get more than.
And you have a lower term.
Not every tenant wants to live in an apartment complex either.
I have a-
And all you need is one.
Yeah.
one-
My only other thing that I look for, I didn't say it here, is I love if it has a garage. If I can find a property with a garage, because a lot of tenants like a garage. So that's part of it. I don't always buy one with a garage, but I like it.
So do you think in your upcoming investments, do you think that do you think you're gonna look for a single family again, or are you gonna do more duplex, you're gonna stick with this?
Stick with what I know. Yeah, stick with what I know. I did branch out and did our third one into an Airbnb, and it's been great. I love it. It financially makes way more than these, but it's also a pain in the ass. Like, right, so this weekend we have 3 flips, right? And so it's been great, but I like having, for me, who's conservative, I like having these that are stable and the rents that I'm gonna get, and then one that's a little risky. So, yeah, for sure, I'll continue to keep buying what I know.
And the third one, your exit strategy is if the Airbnb market drives up, you can rent it and still meet your investment strategy.
So, yep. Yeah, we had decided that, like, worst case scenario, I got Rose furniture back in my house. I don't have a couch, I haven't had a couch in my room since August.
Terry, the only other thing I want to throw out at you specifically, because you brought up the question of like the reserve. I would argue, my path, my first ones were in partnerships. Actually, my first lots of
Good
things were
point.
in partnerships.
Good point.
And I talk to people on a daily basis who are looking for opportunity to invest in real estate, and they don't know where to get started. And if somebody were to bring them a deal and say, I have this opportunity, do you want to partner? You can always find an equity partner.
Really good point.
Again, just to get the ball rolling. There's more money than good ideas out there.
That's what's happening with my Wednesday. Tomorrow. If I don't buy this, my buddy's gonna buy it, and I'm gonna get equity splits of that.
Yeah,
There you
yeah, so,
So just, how are you financing it then, if you have a partner? And obviously keep in mind, so this is probably a stupid question, but how, I mean, is it going under just one of your names, or is there some way that you?
Generally.
Okay.
No, it's going into both names.
yeah, it's going into both your names. You don't have to be married or anything like that to
Yeah,
buy a
okay,
property
yeah.
with somebody
Right.
else. You would talk to your attorney about how you're gonna take title of it. But you can do that. And yeah,
I'd love
any
to have my
attorney
own
that you
attorney,
work
yeah.
with is your attorney. Yeah, talk to an attorney about how you take title.
If you don't know, one will be assigned.
I appreciate it.
Actually, and Jason asked a great question at the beginning. He asked if I'm buying these, if I buy our properties in my name, or I guess the alternative is in an LLC. Yeah,
Limited partnership LLC.
something like that. The advice I got long ago
That's
was
kind of why I
that
was asking.
if I was gonna own like less than 10, that there wasn't a benefit or whatnot to buy in the name of an LLC. That advice might be wrong, but one of the other things that I've been able to see is, like, so that, don't make it complicated. Be like, well, before I buy my first one, I have to like establish an LLC, right? You might not have to do that, but a lot of people think that they need to do that. Talk to an attorney about what you need to do. I've also seen people buy in the name of an LLC and it didn't actually align with their goals. I had somebody who bought in the name of an LLC and they wanted to gift it to their children. But because it wasn't going parent to child, it was going LLC to child, they had tax implications and whatnot with it, so.
You also can't get secondary market residential money, so you're not getting a 15 or 30-year fixed rate if you go down. So you're getting commercial financing.
Right.
which You might get a 7 to 10-year fixed, and if you're not established, you're probably only going to income.
Yeah, so don't feel like you have to do all of that before you buy your first one.
Hey, you don't even have to finance, you can do seller finance. Your first deal.
Yeah, Cindy, you did that,
That'd be
right?
hard money.
Was that your first one?
No, second.
Your second one you did solid financing? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay.
Whatever you like,
Yeah.
I find that as north of 100, he still seeks seller financing. in excellent property.
And there's benefits to the seller of that. That's why it's so great too.
Or even not just, even, not always even the seller, but private finance. I know a lot of people with a lot of money who would like to loan their money at a decent interest rate, you know.
Yeah, you want I'll take all of that.
Yeah, throw some names out, go ahead. Don't be shy.
We got,
You get some financing on a commercial property.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
seller-
Yeah.
private
As long as they're
financing
open
on
to it.
any property.
Yeah.
I know nothing
No,
about
yeah,
seller
yeah,
financing. I'm like, this
So,
is, this
seller, all
sounds great.
seller financing is a private person, can be the seller of the property, who
Right.
says, I'll hold the note that says you'll repay me
Yeah,
to these
okay.
terms.
Right.
It's a bank.
And usually if you default, they just keep all your money and keep the property.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you're pricing one of those right now. Somebody who held seller financing and then
Yeah.
the buyer defaulted and now they
They
just have
cut
all.
10 years worth of payments plus the down payment. Now they're selling their property.
It's fun.
Another question is real estate awesome.
These make me feel like I actually knew what I was
If you guys
doing.
like calm down.
It sounded like you know what you're doing.
Great.
And you don't have to find every property on market. You can write letters to people, knock on their door. Be surprised.
I will give you my asterisk. Sinja doesn't like this one. Sinja has successfully written letters to people and said, if you ever think about selling your property, I'd love to buy it. I made the mistake of doing that to maybe 10 or 15 people at once. And I didn't identify myself as a real estate agent in those letters. And somebody put me on blast on the internet about it, like horrible. So be careful on that.
Do you have to identify yourself as a real estate agent?
You have to before you have your first substantive conversation. So some will argue that the solicitation is that conversation.
I would argue.
Some will argue it's not.
I wasn't buying it as a real estate agent, I was buying it, you know, as an individual who happens to hold a real estate license, right? She didn't see it that way.
Not the board would either.
I was just gonna say.
Oh, on every possible place that she could. Facebook.
Yeah, that's
Google,
exactly what it is. Yeah.
everywhere.
Get her own stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure.
The reason I was to kind of.
You guys, hang tight 2 seconds.
We in a house and we've been here for years, our primary residence isn't putting our needs anymore, drive space. So my problem with that is that it has so much equity, it's almost paid off. Do I rent that out and buy something bigger, or do I sell it?
There's an order in between there, which is just refinance, suck the equity out. And buy whatever you want.
You're gonna continue to write your.
And that's what I'm thinking, now it's a high, not as any goes, but it's a high property. So are people paying those higher rents for a whole property?
I think it depends. I think almost always, yes, but it probably depends a little bit, you know, if what you can find, but I think you would be surprised. You'd be surprised at what people will pay for because in rent, because they don't.
Well, here's a great example. There's a brand new hospital across the street that's trying to hire 400 people as we speak. Some of them will make a lot of money and need a place to live in a low inventory market.
Those homes, because in an area, that's like, when we moved from Pittsburgh 11 years ago, we rented for year first, just because we didn't really know the area. We didn't know where we were gonna live before they wanted to buy something.
Yeah, I think that like we put these limiting beliefs on like what people will rent and why or what they'll do. I mean, part of me was like, whenever we did our third one with an Airbnb, a lot of me was like, what do people come to Carlisle, Pennsylvania for? And there's plenty of them for them to live in, right? And it's bizarre, like what people will come to.
Well, and just for you, there's someone looking to buy with our team right now, it's spending $3,000 a month on a hotel room.
Yeah.
So if they're spending $3,000 on a room in a hotel, you're gonna spend $3,000 for a house. That's what I mean, you know.
In Dartmouth Green.
Okay.
So it's 6 bedrooms, 6 units. And the problem, it's not a problem, but like, the boys, there's no yard. It's a pool, it just drops off, so they can't go out, they can't play. And coming from San Diego, we had a huge yard, we had a vineyard, we had a baseball field.
A baseball field.
Oh,
When it comes to
is that?
What's that? Yeah, you can rent, there are covenants that you can rent, and right now there's another rental that is a military family, and they have to pay around.
Yeah, so the only other thing you want to be careful about is selling your primary residence. You get to, if you want to retain on it, you've got a window of time to sell it. So you might not want to do that.
We're right at 3 years, and it's almost paid off, so I found a farm in Willow Springs that has land, and I just want the horse to just go and run, like they just need to be outside playing. I looked at the Kennedy farm, and anybody else look at that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that was.
Who wants to buy that with me?
Find your partner.
Yeah, wanna buy that?
Find your partner. All right, anything else to do?
Thank you. Drew.
Thank you,
Drew.
This guy.
I'm gonna start saving.
Draw extra line on when.
Putting an action plan together to
Trying
make
to
sure,
merge your
yeah, make sure I have the money and, yeah, and a
Who
plan.
else up there taking?
I have a property by
Yeah,
next.
you know, you're like,
What are you doing, Jared?
Oh, yeah,
I'm trying
no
to
doubt.
duplex where I can live one, rent out the other.
got one for you. That's the
Yeah.
other one for me. Why you get 40? 40? Yeah, you
I'm-
can.
Because that's outside his niche, he only wants two.
I want 65 units.
Right, yes.
This mic's getting closer to 16.
Yeah, I would, I keep the owner occupied, so you get really. That's what I did.
Serious stuff.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
We do something like this with KG.
What? You're gonna do
We
it.
have
Oh, no doubt.
like a discussion.
I have a choice. My
without
wife said I
her
can't come
or
outside.
anybody.
We have lots of commercial. That's a broad term.
Right, I know it's very niche. Okay, apartment complexes or warehouses. Or retail.
Yeah.
Strip malls.
What are we trying to accomplish?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Just being able to rent them out. Just being able to rent them out. Having a